So welcome back to Ayushi Ventra classes students. Today we are going to start our next chapter, the marathon revision of next chapter, that is the chapter number 6, input tax credit. In this chapter we will cover the following sections in the revision lecture. The very first section shall be the section number 16. In section number 16 I will tell you about the eligibility and conditions the person is required to fulfill to claim the ITC. In the second case, that is the eligibility and conditions. Now students, the second section which we will cover in this part is section number 17. In the section number 17 we will cover about it how a person can avail the ITC. Basically we will cover here the section number 17 subsection 5. Other sections will also be covered, but this is one of the most important section of this chapter, that is the block credit. Okay, next student, section number 18 we will cover in this part, and then we will cover about the section number 19. So let's start it from the section number 16. Okay, so here we go. Now students, in the section number 16 we have two subsections. How many subsections we have in our section number 16? Basically two subsections. Okay, yeah, you can make it with me also. It is going to help you a lot in your revision videos. Okay students, if you are even preparing for your CA intermediate examinations and you know this is applicable for the CA, CS, CMA as well as for other streams also, these lectures are. But if you thought that okay, we have just 20 days for examination, if you done this chapter from this revision video, you will be able to crack this chapter for sure. Okay, so in the subsection number 1 we will cover about the eligibility requirement, that which eligibility requirements are there that a person can avail the ITC, and in subsection number 2 we will cover about the conditions, that are conditions which are required to fulfill by the person to claim the ITC. Now I have a memory technique for you guys. As it is subsection number 1 now, so multiply by 2 is equals to 2. So there are two eligibility criteria. Subsection 2 multiply by 2, so there shall be 4 conditions. Okay, in this way you can write it down. So what are the two eligibility criteria? The first is that the person must be a registered person. Person must be a registered person. If a person have the GST registration, only then the person will be able to claim the ITC, otherwise not. So person must be a registered person. Okay, and the second is student that the supply which the person have received, it must be made in the course or furtherance of business. So if you have received something on your personal level, so there shall be no availment of ITC. Okay, so the supply must be made in the course or furtherance of business. Okay, great. Now students, in the case of conditions we have 4 conditions. The very first condition is that the person must be in a possession of a tax paying document. It means the person must have some tax paying document. Must have a tax paying document means that a person is able to show the evidence that yes, I have given the GST to the supplier and now I am going to avail it. So the very first condition here is person must be in the possession of a tax paying document, Now students, in this part we have one very important point also. So here let's start it. Student, that important point is that the GST section number 16 subsection number 2 specifies that the person must have, the supplier, the recipient. In the case of supplier and recipient, as the supplier have provided the details of the recipient in his GSTR1, it is a must condition. If the supplier have not showed the details, have not filed the details in his GSTR1 about that recipient, it means for that recipient the details of ITC have not shown in the GSTR2B. So in that case student, the recipient will not be able to avail the ITC. Yes, now you must be thinking, ma'am, we know that the details of the ITC which the supplier have not shown in GSTR1, that is not reflecting in the GSTR2B of the recipient, is ineligible ITC and person can claim 5%. Just wait. This is an amendment for the examination student for the 2023 examination, that now a person cannot avail any ITC for the ineligible credits. Okay, so previously it was 5%, but now it has been amended. There shall be no availment of ITC. Okay, now the second point is student that the second condition actually is the person recipient must receive the goods or services. So So if the person have not received the goods or services yet, the recipient will not be eligible to claim the ITC. Now student, but it has an exception, and the exception is of the bill to ship to model. Now what is this bill to ship to model? Now let's talk about it. So students, in the case of bill to ship to model, what will happen? So let's suppose students, for example, let's take an example of you guys, that just assume that you have scored the maximum marks, the highest marks in IDT in all over India, and for that purpose, to congratulate you guys, I have sent you a smartwatch. Now how I am ordering it for you, suppose this is you. So here is a smartwatch company. I paid the payment of rupees 35,000 to the smartwatch company. I am said to them, okay, just ship this product to my student. So in that case, students, bill is on my name, but the company is going to ship it to you guys. So I have not received that goods or services, but it will be a deeming provision here, deeming clause here, that is deemed to be received by me. So this is the only exception here, that is a bill to ship to model. Now let's talk about the third category, the third condition. The third condition here is students. Now let's talk about the third condition, that the tax charged on supply, it means the GST which as a recipient I have paid to my supplier, that tax must be actually paid by the supplier to the government. If the government has not received a tax part, so they are not going to give you the credit of that ITC. Okay, so tax charged on supply must have been paid to government. It means the supplier must have been paid that tax to the government. So that is the third condition. Now student, let's talk about the fourth condition, last but not the least condition of section 16 subsection 2, that is he has furnished his returns under section 39. So students, in the GST returns, section 39 specifies about what are the due dates that a person is required to file his GSTRs. So he has furnished his GST returns or GSTR as per section 39. Okay, so he has furnished GSTR under section 39. This is the best example here, students. Let's assume it that if when a person is going to file the GSTR, only then the recipient will be able to claim the ITC. Na? So they said that yes, the person have furnished the GSTR under section 39 also. But ma'am, is there any kind of provisos for the sections? Yes, student. So let's talk about the proviso. First of all, what is the meaning of the proviso? Proviso means exception of a provision to section. It means in this section, if we have some exception, so that will be known as proviso. Okay, now let's start. So students, the first proviso which we are going to cover here is about, now in the case of first proviso, they said that if the goods are received, if this is the case that the goods are received, this is particularly for the goods only, not for the services. So if the goods are received in lots or installments, so what will happen? So students, in this case, if the goods are received in lots or installments, so the recipient will be able to take the ITC only upon the receipt of the last installment. It means student, they can't claim the ITC in between. They have to claim the ITC only upon the receipt of the last installment or the last lot, as the case may be. So upon the receipt of last installment only. Okay, yes. So ma'am, what is the how it becomes a proviso here, students? So in the category of, in the second condition, we have said that the person must have received the goods or services, but in this case, although the person have received the goods or services, but the person will be able to claim the ITC only upon the receipt of the last installment or the last lot. Okay, now the next proviso here is, so this is the first proviso. Second proviso which we are going to cover here is that, student, payment have to be made by the recipient to the supplier within 180 days. But ma'am, what will happen if the recipient have not paid the payment even in the 180 days? So students, in this case, the person have to reverse the IT which he have been claimed earlier. So let's talk about it also. So in the case of second proviso, payment has to be made within how many days? So payment has to be made within 180 days. Within 180 days starting from which date? So within 180 days from the date when the person have issued the invoice. Okay, so student, but what will happen, so if the person have not made the payment to the supplier within 180 days, so the person recipient have to reverse the IT which he have already claimed. Okay, yeah. So now student, this is our section number 16, subsection number 1 and subsection number 2. I hope you have got this point. There shall be no worry about now these are points. Okay, so now let's talk about the second section, that is the section number 17. Let's start it. So students, and yes, before starting the section number 17, yes student, there is also one very important point, and that point is about the depreciation. Now you might be thinking, depreciation is in section 32 of Income Tax Act 1961. Definitely, but we are going to talk about the GST here. Students, so basically we are going to talk about the capital goods. Now, we all know that in the case of capital assets, not the capital goods, in the case of capital assets, we charge depreciation. Yes, so they said that what will happen, it means is the person is required to pay the GST if the person is required to claim the depreciation on the GST part also. Means, for example student, recipient have purchased a machinery worth rupees 1 lakh and he have paid the GST of 18% on that machinery. So it means the person have totally paid rupees 1 lakh plus 1 lakh into 18%, that is 18,000. So person have completely paid the amount of rupees 1 lakh 18,000. Now the question is that on which part depreciation will be claimed, on rupees 1 lakh 18,000 or rupees 1 lakh. It means that if the person is required to claim the depreciation, is required to put the depreciation amount on the GST part also. So students, here is a simple explanation of this point. That is, there are two options given to the supplier. There are two options given to the recipient that what they want to do. First of all, they can avail the ITC of the GST component. That is, they can avail the ITC of rupees 18,000. Second, students, if they don't want to avail the ITC, but yeah, if they have availed the ITC of the GST component, so they have to put the depreciation only on rupees 1 lakh. Why students? Because the 18,000, the benefit on 18,000, they have already taken it by means of ITC. So again, they can't take the benefit of the depreciation on that 18,000. But the second option is that they must not claim any kind of ITC of 18,000. Then in that case, they can claim the depreciation on total 1 lakh 18,000. So these are the two options given to the recipient, that either to claim the ITC on the GST component or either to claim the depreciation under Income Tax Act on the GST component. Okay, I hope you got my point students. Now the next case we are going to cover here is about, that is, now let's talk about the next case here. So students, now here the next point is that what is the time limit for availing ITC? What is the time limit for availing ITC? Now students, in the case of that what is the time limit that a person can claim that the person can avail the ITC is that he can avail the ITC first of all after the 30th day of November, after the 30th day of November of the subsequent financial year, that is following the end of the financial year in which such supply was made, or second, they can avail the ITC when they have to furnish the annual return. Normally the annual return has been furnished by the 31st December. Okay, so by furnishing the annual return. Now this is an amendment here. Previously it was the month of October, but now it is the month of November, that is after the 30th day of November of furnishing the annual return, whichever is earlier. So please keep it in your mind that previously it was October, but now it is November. Okay, I hope you got my point students. Okay, so now let's start about the next point. Now the next point here which we are going to talk about is, now student, let's start about the section number 17, the revision of section number 17. In section 17, subsection number 1. First of all, section 17 is basically about the apportionment and the block credit. Now in section 17, subsection 1, this specifies that if a person is making supplies and that supply is partly for the business purpose and partly for the personal purpose, that is other than the business purpose, so in that case the person can claim the ITC, that he can avail the ITC only to the extent he has made the supplies for the business purpose. Okay, so that is the complete section number 17, subsection number 1. Yeah, that is the complete it is. Next is subsection number 2. In subsection number 2, student, they said that if a particular supply have been made in respect of taxable supplies as well as the exempted supply. So in that case, the person who has made the supplies in respect of taxable supplies as well as of the exempted supplies, it means the person have used some goods or services partly for the taxable supplies, and in the case of taxable supplies it is including the zero rated supplies. Yes, the zero rated supplies will be included in this category, and he have used that goods or services also for the exempted supplies. So ITC can be availed only to the extent the goods or services are used for making further supply of taxable goods or services including the zero rated. That is the section number 17 subsection number 2. I hope you got this point also. Next is section number 17 subsection number 4. Students, in the case of section number 17 subsection number 4, it is about the banks. So this subsection will be applicable in the category of banks, and this is optional for banks. So student, it said that first of all, the banks can apply the complete procedure of the ITC, and the second option which given to them is that they can claim the 50% of ITC in respect of the banks. It means students, it means the 50% of the eligible ITC. This option is available to the banks. They can opt any of the option. It means the option which tells them to apply the complete rules of the ITC, and the second is that they can apply the section number 17 subsection number 4. They can avail the 50% of eligible ITC. Now students, we are going to start one of the most important subsection of this section, that is section number 17 subsection number 5. Section number 17 subsection number 5 is about the block credit, and students, in the examination there are 99.99% chances that you will get a question on this topic. It means either the subjective or objective question, but yes, you are going to get the question on this topic for sure. So now let's start about it. Student, it specifies that which are those goods or services on the supplying of which the recipient cannot claim the ITC, as the per the section number 17 subsection number 5, they are coming under the category of the block credit. It means the ITC have been blocked on those supplies. So let's start about it one by one. The very first case is of the motor vehicles and conveyances. Now students, in the case of motor vehicle and conveyances, the person and those motor vehicles which have at least 4 wheels, that is cars and all. Now students, motor vehicle includes those vehicles which have at least 4 wheels, and the conveyances will include the vessels and aircraft. So on these 3 categories the ITC have been blocked. But yes, there are some exceptions to this point, and the exception is, student, ITC is not available for motor vehicles which are used to transport persons. It means if the motor vehicles are used for the transportation of persons, so only those motor vehicles will be eligible to claim the ITC which are having a seating capacity of more than or equal to 13%. And yes, that seating capacity will include the driver seat also. And yes, that they are talking about the seating capacity. It means the approved seating capacity by the company. Okay. Now students, in the next case, ma'am, is the ITC is available on the vessels and aircraft? No student, further ITC is not available on the vessels and aircraft. Second, there are some kind of exceptions which are eligible. These exceptions are available for all the categories, that is motor vehicles, vessels, aircraft. The first exception which I am going to talk about to you guys is the similar line of business. It means if the person have purchased the motor vehicle conveyances for further supplying of that motor vehicles or conveyances, it means they are in the similar line of business. So yes, the ITC shall be allowed. Second case is, students, here, if they have taken the motor vehicle for the purpose of transportation of passenger, but please keep it in your mind that seating capacity must be more than or equal to the 13%. It must be more than or even to equal. Okay, so now in that case, now yeah students, that is one more amendment also. I have covered it previously. So students, previously they have not specified about the driver seat. Now they specified that it must be more than 13 seats, and now it must be including the driver seat also. Okay, so if it is less than or equal to 13 passenger seats, so no ITC shall be taken. But if it is more than 13 passenger seats, so ITC shall be taken. It is amendment. So if it is not covered in whichever book you are from whichever book you are studying your concept, so please amend it right now. Okay, next exception is if the motor vehicle and conveyances are used for imparting training on driving, flying. It means they are imparting training, they are giving training on that motor vehicle and conveyances for the purpose of driving, flying, navigating such vehicles. So yes, in that case also ITC is allowed. And the fourth one is transportation of goods. But student, in the case of transportation of goods, ITC will be allowed on the motor vehicles and those conveyances which are used for transportation of goods. But if those transportation vehicle are related to the GTA Goods Transportation Agency, so this exception will not cover here, because students, in that case this provision will not be applicable. Okay, it means in that case ITC shall be blocked. Okay, so however this is concerning other transporters and not the GTA. Now in the next case, we are covering about the food and beverages that are supplying in the restaurant and other places, club memberships and others. In this case, student, ITC is not available. Even the ITC is not available for the foods and beverages, for the club membership, for the outdoor catering, beauty treatment, health treatment, cosmetic and plastic surgery, as all these particulars are for the purpose of personal purpose only. Yeah, and restaurant service is one of the main reason, because the government also know that if they allowed the ITC on the restaurant service, so the huge crowd will claim the ITC. Now students, in these particular categories, but ma'am, if these supplies are for the similar line of business, so even in that case it will not be allowed. No student, so in that case there will be an exception. The first exception is if this is a part of the similar line of business, it means a person have taken these services to further supply it, so in that case ITC allowed. Second is students, where these components are a part of the mixed or composite supply. So it means the food is given with some other supplies in either the category of mixed supply or composite supply. So yes, ITC shall be allowed. Third is where government makes it mandatory for employer to provide these services to their employees. So in that case also ITC shall be allowed. Okay. Next is about the services of general insurance, servicing, repair and maintenance. So students, in this category, if the services of general insurance, repair, maintenance are in respect of the category number 1, that is motor vehicles and the conveyances, so ITC shall not be allowed. Yes, but again there are some exceptions. Exceptions are as same as we have covered in point number 1 also. So these are same as exceptions which are mentioned for motor vehicle, vessels, aircraft. The other exceptions are students, and what are those exceptions we have covered just yet now, that is a similar line of business, imparting training on that motor vehicle or conveyances, using for the transportation of passenger, having a seating capacity of more than 13 persons, and for the transportation of goods also. Okay, but not the GTA. Now the next is where it is received by a taxable person who is engaged in the manufacturing of such motor vehicle, vessels and aircraft. So yes, for that purpose also, this is the business of the person now, so that they are manufacturing the cars. If something is required, they just take the services of repair and maintenance. So in all those cases ITC will be allowed. And if it is so student, if it is the similar line of business, that is they are providing the general insurance to other persons also, so in that case also it will be allowed. Next category is membership in a club. Students, in case of membership in a club, health, fitness center, first of all tell me one thing, can you do this, that you have taken the membership of a club, fitness center and gym on your name, and you just transfer it to other person? No, we can't do it. So in that case, similar line of business point is not applicable, which is going to be applicable in all other points. So here is only one exception, that where government makes it mandatory for employer to provide these services to employee. So as the government have made it mandatory, so government will provide the ITC also. Next is students, if it is a case of rent-a-cab, life insurance and health insurance. So student, all these cases, that is rent-a-cab, life insurance and health insurance, ITC is not allowed. But there are some exceptions. Exceptions are if these services are made obligatory for an employer to provide its employee. Second, if it is in the category of the similar line of business, and student, if it is a part of the mixed or composite supply here. Okay, so next point is, yes, if these cabs, basically rent a cab case, so if these cabs are used for the purpose of leasing, renting or hiring of motor vehicles, vessels or aircraft, but students, these are with exceptions as mentioned in the point number 1. So if though for those exceptions, that is the person have taken a rent, that the person have taken a cab on a rent, so ITC will be blocked. But if that person have taken the car on a rent, cab on a rent, for the purpose of imparting the training to the other person, transportation of goods, transportation of passengers, so in that case, or the similar line of business, so ITC shall be allowed. Okay. Next is students, the next point here is travel point. The next point here is travel point. So in the case of travel point, what will happen? ITC is not available in the case of travel benefits which are extended to employees on vacation, such as leave or home travel concession. So if an employer is giving any kind of LTC or HTC, leave travel concession or home travel concession to other persons, and some GST have been paid for this purpose for the holiday packages also, so ITC shall not be allowed. But yes, one exception is there which is applicable in all point, that the government makes it mandatory for the employer to provide these services to the employees. Now the seventh point is about the work contract. First of all, what do you mean by the work contract? Work contract means that contract where material as well as labor are provided by the contractor. Only just material is not provided by the contractor, material as well as labor both are provided. So student, in the case of work contract, ITC is not available in the case of immovable property. So work contract is in the respect of immovable property, so ITC shall not be allowed, it is blocked. But if it is a case of movable property, so ITC shall be allowed. Okay, yeah. Ma'am, is there any other exceptions? Yes student, for sure there are some exceptions. The very first exception is student, if it is used in the similar line of business, that the work contract services are taken to provide further work contract services, so ITC shall be allowed. Second student, ITC are allowed on plant and machinery which are attached to land, because they will be considered as immovable property. But these four categories will not include in the case of plant and machinery. Land, obviously not. Building or any kind of civil structure. Telecommunication tower, yes, the telecommunication tower will not include in the category of plant and machinery, so it will not include it in the exception. Fourth is, if there is any kind of pipeline which are laid outside the factory premises, not inside, they are covering it outside the factory premises. Okay, point number 8 is constructing an immovable property on own account. In the seventh category, person have taken the services of the work contractor. Here the person the person is building that the person is constructing that immovable property on own account. It means what they have done, they have hired the laborers and they said to them, okay, I will provide you the material, please just make it out. Okay, so in all those cases students, now students, in these cases ITC shall be blocked. But is there any kind of exception here? So yes, there is an exception, and the exception is that this rule also will not apply in the category of plant and machinery, as we have covered in the point number 7. So student, ITC is available on the inputs which are used to manufacture plants and machinery for their own use. But yes, now the important exception here is when the construction of immovable property is not on own account. So if the construction is done not for own account, for any other account, so in that case ITC shall be allowed, because in that case it will be considered as similar line of business. And the third category is if the person have not capitalized the value of goods or services they have used to construct this immovable property, so they can avail the ITC, but it should not be capitalized. Please keep it in your mind. Next is students, point number 9, in the case of composition scheme. So as we have covered in the section number 10 of the CGST Act 2017 also, that is, a person who is registering themselves under the composition scheme, they cannot avail the ITC. So yes, as they have done. Is there any kind of exception for those persons? No, there is no exception for those persons. Next is point number 10, which is very important. No ITC in case of non-resident. So students, the person, if the person is a non-resident taxable person, it is NRTP, so, and they have received some, they have get some goods or services on which they have paid the GST, so the ITC cannot be availed on those goods or services which are received by a NRTP, non-resident taxable person. Is there any kind of exception? So yes, one exception is there, but students, that exception will be available in the case of goods, not on the services. If the goods are received in the case of importation, it means ITC shall be available on any goods if that goods are imported by that person. This is not available in the case of services, so please keep it in your mind. Next is, and yes students, if you are liking this video, so please like this, comment on this video that how much you are liking the revision session, and do not forget to subscribe my channel as so many videos are coming in the way. Okay. Point number 11, no ITC for personal use. I have already told you in the section number 16 that the person must be use those supplies in the course of furtherance of business. Point number 12 is free samples and destroyed goods. Now students, if the goods are have been stolen, destroyed, write off or given off as gift or a free sample to other person, so on those goods the person cannot avail the ITC. Now you must be thinking, but ma'am, giving the free samples to other person is a regular and routine part of the business. Yeah, that must be true. But what is happening here student? The ITC is basically available. The ITC is basically available in the cases when government knows that they are supplying these things to other persons and they will charge the GST and we will get that GST. So okay, that will be set off. But in these cases, no GST shall be taken because it is supplied at free of cost. So in that case, no ITC can be availed by the person. Point number 13, no ITC in fraud cases. Now what is this? So student, if the ITC have been paid due to the fraud cases which has resulted, it means that fraud comes into the perspective that they have paid the non or short tax payment, they have claimed the excessive refund, they have utilized the ITC amount in a wrong manner, and then they will are liable to pay the ITC. So for they are liable to pay the GST. So for that GST part, they cannot avail the ITC. With this part students, we have covered a section number 17, subsection number 5 also. I hope you like the revision session. Again, I am saying students, it's a request from my side. If you are liking the revision session, so please like it, comment on the revision videos, and yes, let me know in the comment section how much you are liking it, and share it with your friends. Do not forget to subscribe my channel. Now let's do one thing. We will cover the section number 18 and section number 19 in our tomorrow session. Okay, so it means for ITC we have basically two sessions. Session number 1 have covered today and session number 2 will be covered tomorrow. And students, so many marathon revision videos have also come in these respects. So if you want to cover those revision videos, just click on the description below. It have the links of all those revision videos also. And yes, on the channel, just search my channel, just navigate my channel. It has so many revision videos also. Thank you. Have a nice day students. Bye. Have a great day.